Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Coach Prime and the Colorado Buffaloes holding a massive recruiting weekend this Saturday as they host Oregon State. Going to be talking about the top targets in the 2024 class that will be on campus in Boulder this weekend. Also want to dive into how Coach Prime is going about building this roster and building this program for the Colorado Buffaloes. We talked about a JUCO transfer that committed to Colorado on Monday, and a lot of critical feedback in the comment section regarding Coach Prime using the transfer portal too heavily and not paying enough attention to recruiting the high school ranks. We're going to talk about how Coach Prime is going about building this roster and how to balance recruiting the high school ranks versus the transfer portal. Before we get into it, just want to say thank you to you guys, especially the Colorado fans. This is a program that we're going to be talking a lot about in the next couple of weeks as the transfer portal opens. Going to be breaking down all the commitments that are heading to Colorado. So if you do enjoy the content and you want to support the boys, consider subscribing to the channel. Again, all the support you guys have shown, it truly does mean a lot. And more importantly, would love to hear your guys' takes on this conversation about how to build a roster in this college football era, specifically at Colorado. Without further ado, let's get into it. And getting into that conversation regarding using the transfer portal and recruiting the high school ranks, I view the transfer portal as a way to acquire a valuable way to acquire talent at the college football level to supplement a roster. Right, you see all the top programs across the country, and Dabo Swinney at Clemson getting a lot of heat for not using the transfer portal. A lot of the top programs across the country, including Georgia, including Alabama, including Michigan, take a look at their roster and say, what deficiencies do we have that we need to address immediately? And you can't really address deficiencies in your roster immediately out of the high school ranks because these guys need a couple of years to get developed, making that jump from high school to college. So the transfer portal represents a way to turn a roster relatively quickly to give you added talent for year one. Right, you're getting guys who've already played at the college football level, shown what they can do at the college football level. And for Coach Prime, you take a look at the program last year. This was a team that was 1-11, the worst team at the Power 5 level. You looked at that roster and said there are deficiencies all over the place. So people being critical of Coach Prime going to the transfer portal so heavily, I understand the criticism. I'm in the boat of you need to recruit the high school ranks to build a program successfully. That being said, you can't ignore the spot Colorado was when Coach Prime took over. In terms of deficiencies, pretty much at every single position on the offense and defensive side of the ball. So what did he need to do to address those deficiencies immediately? He needed to go to the transfer portal and completely overturn this roster. And you look at what he did, it's hard to argue it didn't work. This was a team that was 1-11, could not beat anybody in the Power 5 conference, and they're sitting there, just beat TCU week one, who played for a national championship less than 12 months ago. So you're seeing the success. And what I think you're going to see more of is, yes, there are, most Coach Prime has said it. I think a lot of Colorado fans would agree. There are still plenty of deficiencies in this roster that need to get addressed before the 2024 season. Coach Prime is going to address them in the transfer portal. But as he continues to build this roster and get more talent in there, that baseline of talent and the baseline deficiencies, they're going to be less. So over the next couple of years, he's going to be active in the transfer portal again, probably in 2025 as well. But getting into 2026, year 3, year 4, you're going to see it, in my mind, a little less transfer portal because the need to go to the transfer portal is a little less great and a little bit more adding at the high school ranks. That's how I see this playing out. But to criticize Coach Prime for going to the transfer portal so heavily, I understand the concern, or I understand the critique, because I'm full on board of you need to recruit at the high school level at the base to build the fundamental pieces in your roster. But when you look at Colorado, it was a really extenuating circumstance because this team was so bad in 2022. Coach Prime wanted to win immediately. And I think partially you winning immediately at Colorado, what he's doing now, it's going to make this program more attractive at the high school ranks. In an alternate universe, say Coach Prime says, hey, we're going to recruit at the high school level. We're not going to use the transfer portal that much. This team this year, probably not winning more than 1 or 2 games. And so what does that do when you're trying to pitch guys to come out of and commit to you out of high school? It gets harder because this team is still not good. So when he made the move to go to the transfer portal so heavily and make this team compete in 2023, I think it made a lot of sense. And I think it makes a lot of sense next year to use the transfer portal as well to continue to build this roster out. And once this roster is heading in the right direction, that's when you focus your attention more to the high school ranks and building out these high school classes. Now, in 2024, this is a massive weekend in terms of getting some blue chip talent on campus and potentially committed to Colorado. Let's get into the visitor list. The first one, and this is by far the biggest recruit that'll be on campus. I know Colorado fans are pumped about it. Jordan Seaton, this is not his first time in Boulder this season. This position, and it ain't no secret to Colorado fans, this Colorado offensive line needs to improve. Jordan Seaton, 5-star offensive tackle from IMG Academy. This is a guy that he is ready to play year one. And what you're pitching, if you're Coach Prime and this Colorado coaching staff is Jordan Seaton, look at our offensive line. You have the ability to come in and to compete for a starting spot as a true freshman. You look at the other schools you're going up against for his commitment, Alabama, Ohio State, Texas. That's a little harder to sell. Jordan Seaton's probably sitting a year or two before he's playing meaningful snaps at those schools. For Colorado, and he's probably going to be a day one starter in this program, making him just a massive, massive target at probably the biggest position group need that they have. Jordan Seaton, by far, if you could ask Colorado and Coach Prime, hey, if you could land any commit that or recruit that is going to be on campus, they would say Jordan Seaton in an absolute heartbeat because he's going to change this offensive line immediately upon arriving in Boulder. The next guy who is another interesting target, and again, going back to the discussion of where Colorado needs to improve most, it's not only along the offensive line, it's along the defensive line as well, continuing to add depth and talent. Nasir Johnson, top 100 recruit from the state of Georgia, committed to the Florida Gators. The Georgia Bulldogs are pushing hard as well. You see it. Deion Sanders, one of the better quarterbacks in college football. The wide receiver position, loaded. I think in the skill position group, like this Colorado team is not far off from being a very good football team. Where they are far off is along the lines of scrimmage. Nasir Johnson would go a long way in making this group a lot more physical. You're talking about a guy who is 6'4.5", 300 pounds, did a little research on him, 31-inch vertical. And this guy absolutely has bunnies. He is a dude that immediately adds depth and talent to the lines of scrimmage. So you talk about Jordan Seaton, Nasir Johnson, two massive targets in the 2024 class. And although these are probably the two top targets for Colorado in terms of the positions that they need to address, the most exciting one here is Dron Miller. And Dron Miller is a guy that gets comped to Deebo Samuel. This 6 foot, 190-pound wide receiver from the state of Texas was committed to Texas A&M. Decommits. LSU's going at him pretty hard. You take a look at Dron Miller's numbers as a junior, 1,400 yards, 21 touchdowns, 361 yards rushing, 3 touchdowns. He's a guy that can play in the backfield, can play in the slot. At the end of the day, get him on campus, get him the football any way you possibly can, and you're going to be feeling good about how this offense looks. Dron Miller, a massive target. And again, this offense, it's pretty easy to sell the wide receivers. You've seen a guy like Amarian Miller come in as a true freshman and make some noise. It's a prolific offense. You're excited if you're Dron Miller at the opportunity to come in and play immediately and be productive in this offense. And the last guy I want to talk about, another very intriguing prospect, King Joseph Edwards from the state of Georgia. This one sounds like it could happen relatively soon. 6'4", 230-pound edge rusher, hurt most of his junior year. I got the chance to watch him on ESPN play Buford. He's kind of a game wrecker. And what excites me most about King Joseph Edwards is the ceiling is so high. This is a guy who played tight end for most of his career early on. Transitions to that defensive line edge rusher spot and has kind of just been a dude. I mean, you're talking about double-digit sacks, double-digit quarterback hurries as a senior at Mill Creek in Georgia. Again, you talk about addressing the lines of scrimmage, the point of attack. King Joseph Edwards, Nasir Johnson, Jordan Seaton, those guys would be massive, massive gets for Colorado. Again, only 10 commits in the 2024 class. I expect that number to grow as you get to early signing day. And then just taking a sneak peek at the 2025 class and kind of hammer home kind of my take on what Colorado is doing. This might be another small 2024 class, right? Because I think Coach Prime, a lot of his attention is bringing guys into the transfer portal to continue to get this roster where it needs to be competitive. But in 2025, this is where I see that first true high school class that is changing Colorado. You take a look at, you already have 3 commits, really, really good prospects, right? Antoine Hill, one of the top quarterbacks in the country. Winston Watkins Jr., one of the top wide receivers in the country. The 2025 class for Colorado, that's where I see the first elite high school class for Coach Prime. And why did you bring in Coach Prime? One, electric personality, one of the most iconic people in the sport of football, but you bring him in for the talent acquisition part. He's a great coach, a great developer of culture and young men, but he's also an elite talent acquisition guy. That's why you brought him into Colorado. You take a look at Colorado the past couple of years, bottom in the Power 5 in recruiting. You Prime in to get these recruits coming to Colorado. And I think in the 2025 class, you already have a great start sitting at a top 11 spot. That's where you see this high school class really explode. So what I'm looking at is a solid 2024 class with a lot of transfers. And then the 2025 class, that's when that high school class starts to build and you start seeing some of the blue chip high school talent come into Colorado. Really going to be fun to monitor this team in the offseason. A lot of moves will be made. Appreciate the Colorado fans rocking with the fellas again. If you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later.